Major funding for these programs is provided by grants from HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, SJP Properties, Murray Hill Properties, Bank of America, Greenberg Traurig LLP. Additional funding is provided by grants from Arbor Realty Trust and Terry's Investment Partners, Athena Group, BRT Realty Trust, Burden LLP, City Habitats, City Investment Fund, Cushman & Wakefield, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, Herbert J. Sims & Company, Herrick Feinstein LLP, Helmsley Spear, Jackson Development Group, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Kilroy Metal Products, Massey Knackle Realty Services, M&T Bank, Meridian Capital Group, McSam Hotel Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Moinian Organization, Must Development, Palin Enterprises, Rosenthal & Rosenthal, Signature Bank, SIDNEY FETNER Associates, Sutphin Properties, Stonehenge Partners, Studley, Triangle Services, WITKOFF Group, Extreme Contracting and Deconstruction.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller, host of the Stoller Report, Real Estate Trends in the Tri-State Region. There's so much construction taking place in New York. All you see is cranes, all you see is renovations. You see all this construction. Who's doing it? Who's responsible for it? Today I assemble these three gentlemen who are rather involved with the construction industry and what's happening in construction in New York. My guest today includes Joseph Capitelli, Vice Chairman of StructureTone, Charles Crobart, President of Kilroy Metal Products, and last but not least, Larry Levine, who doesn't say he's president, he's secretary and treasurer of the PAR Group. Now, what is the PAR Group?
The PAR Group is a combination of PAR plumbing trades, which do both plumbing, HVAC, and fire protection work. So instead of just being...
For my audience, what is fire protection work?
Sprinkler work, basically.
Sprinkler work, yeah.
But not lawn sprinklers.
No lawn sprinklers.
No lawn sprinklers.
Yeah, and what's Kilroy, so my guest can I have an idea?
We're primarily a commercial window contractor, mostly commercial office buildings, and some window wall, some curtain wall, but primarily replacement windows in iconic structures.
You're being modest. We'll get to that over the show. And you, Capitelli, St. Francis, you know, the Brooklyn boy? Come on. What is StructureTone? The 850-pound gorilla in this business?
StructureTone is a general contractor and construction manager, doing mostly rehabs, renovations, and corporate interiors.
Right, and as Charles said prior to the show, number one in...
Number one in New York, yes.
And what does number one in New York mean? How big is your volume, or how many
we
people?
do about $3.5 billion a year in construction volume throughout the country. In New York, we do about $1.5 billion.
So we were talking prior to the show about the biggest problem, and I, in my role at Apollo, you know, we get these construction projects, and you know, and we can't build at a reasonable price in New York. Why can't we build at a reasonable price in New York?
Why can't we build at a reasonable price?
Right. Why? You know, Charles was saying before, the average laborer is earning how much?
Well, not the laborer, but the average skilled allied trade union labor person, carpenter, iron worker, etc., is approximately approaching $100 an hour in cost per every hour that person is working, and that's the cost to the specialty trade contractor.
And then what about the cost of the benefits?
No, that's inclusive of the benefits.
Inclusive of the benefits and the liability and workers' comp insurance.
So you're saying that if a worker works 35 hours a week, how much is it costing?
It's going to cost close to $3,500 a week for that worker.
which is $175,000 a year.
Exactly.
Cost. He doesn't take that home.
Right.
No. It's cost of $175,000.
And then the contractor has to make a profit on that to stay in business. I mean, we are not communists.
No, we
By choice.
We are not communists. This is not a socialistic show. I've done a show where I had the socialist and I acted like the communist when we discussed 421A tax benefits. But my question is this. You have an operation in New Jersey.
Yes.
What is it, Parr, New Jersey?
No, Triangle.
Triangle, New Jersey.
Right.
And you do business in New Jersey also.
Two offices in New Jersey.
In New Jersey. Why is it less expensive to do construction in New Jersey as opposed to New York City?
Because the plumbers don't make $100 an hour or cost $100 an hour in New Jersey. They cost considerably less.
Mm-hmm.
Materials are the same.
Materials
right.
are the same, yes.
You know, I've had shows, I've had Mitch Hirsch, Matt Calley, who said he can build a building in New Jersey, you know, for a brand new office building for $500-600 a square foot. It can't be done in New York City. That cost is $100 is $1,000 a square foot.
All close to it.
Right. Are you saying that the differential is 40%? 30 to 40%?
You just said more than 40%. You said 100% just now.
Right, but I mean, look at the differential over there. Are we having a quality difference?
Between New Jersey and New York? Not necessarily.
No.
But you build faster in New York. The speed with which you build is much faster in New York.
So you get those guys.
The jobs move much quicker.
To remain competitive, you have to.
You have to.
But so let's talk. Let's go over the type of jobs that you're doing today in New York City, and you know, I'd like to get a perspective on all of it.
Well, our main business is corporate interiors. Some of the bigger jobs we're doing right now is we're doing the complete interior fit out of the new Bank of America building on 42nd and 6th Avenue. We are also doing work for many large corporate clients, MetLife, Bloomberg, Goldman Sachs.
Here's a question of mine. You did not build the superstructure for the new Bank of America building. Why does somebody go to Structure Tone to do the interiors as opposed to the general contractor who was working on the building?
Because that is our specialty. We specialize in corporate interiors. We have the systems, the resources, and the experience to build corporate interiors with more quality and with more speed than what we call a base building contractor who specializes in core and shell work. They do what they do better, and we do what we do better.
Now, but you know, we were saying, and I mean, I think we would all agree that the economy is a little slow. Bank of America lost a couple of dollars this year, but they're going through a new building, so they have to do it. But Citigroup and all of the financial services companies are hurting. So this isn't that going to have an effect on your business?
Well, it may at some point, but our business is corporate interiors and corporate facilities. And if a bank has a need to build a facility to house their employees, they have to build it.
But if the bank is not going to take expansion space, then why do they, you know, they're not going to take more space. So don't you see potentially the construction business hurting a little bit in New York?
I haven't seen it yet. We are still booking major contracts with many major corporations. People in the companies that are in the insurance industry are doing major expansions in New York. Hotels, we're a major renovator of hotels, which is a big part of our business. Information services companies, broadcast companies, advertising agencies, law firms are expanding tremendously in New York. The average law firm today is 200,000 to 300,000 feet. There's been a tremendous amount of law firm activity in the last year and is continuing on.
Now, I know specifically that you're utilizing Charles's company to put new windows into a building which is probably 80 years old.
Yeah,
that probably
205th Avenue.
That probably hasn't been renovated in, I don't want to say 80 years, but quite a few years.
Quite a few years, yeah.
tell me, I want both of you to tell me about that job. Tell me about the windows and then what you do.
Well, it's first of all, it's a landmark, and it's one of the areas that we do specialize in. So the product has to basically be approved by the Landmarks Preservation Commission, and that's the overriding driver of the product selection. And the windows that were in the building were the original windows. And we also did the Flatiron a year or two before that, and the same thing there. Those windows were 100 years old. And it was
very
also
energy efficient, right?
Well, but besides the fact that the new building and new clients coming in there are going to want more energy efficient products, besides the energy efficiency, they also get sound reduction. They become virtually maintenance free. There's a lot of ancillary benefits to it, and I know that building has a major client coming in, taking, I think it's 6 or 7 floors, and there's a deadline to get that job done. It's a major project for us.
Now, a couple of years ago, you did the Empire State Building, and this year you're doing 1407 Broadway, and then you were talking about the Barbizon. The Barbizon is a conversion of a hotel.
Correct.
Correct.
And I mean, how long does it take to do the renovation of a building to put new windows in?
Depends on how many windows. 1407 Broadway is 4,000 windows, and we were a sole trade contractor there. We worked directly for the owners. There were no GCs or anyone else involved. We did that job in about 12 months, totally occupied, and every 2 weeks, this building is filled with fashion design showrooms. So every 2 weeks of the month, they have Market Week. So you have to work around their schedules, and coordinating it is a major problem. It's our niche. We do that a lot, as opposed to a lot of new construction. So where you asked Joe before why they would be doing more interior than core and shell, it's because companies develop a niche and gain experience in it, and one job begets the next, and we're particularly set up for retrofit work in occupied buildings and landmark type work, as opposed to new construction, which we do a certain small degree of.
Now, you were saying you do both new buildings?
Yes, we do. And
that's your brother?
no, I do the new buildings.
You do the new buildings.
My brother does the interiors, and my brother's doing the Bank of America job for Joe.
So let's talk about new buildings. New buildings, you know, right now we have the 421As in the residential is the big question. You have to get the foundations in the ground. You have to have your plans over there. How much new building do you see being built?
We have, right now in our office, we have more plans than we can even look at. There's so much product coming online. I don't know if all these buildings are going to get built. I don't know if they're all going to get financed, but the amount of drawings are overwhelming for new construction and when I say renovation, conversions into apartments and hotels. Just, it hasn't slowed up. If anything, it's got even a little busier since the first of the year.
And I mean, how much, you know, of a job, I mean, for my audience, how much of the job is the heating, the ventilation, and the plumbing in a new construction?
Well, we don't do
percentage-wise, you know.
We do in new construction. We only really do plumbing work. We do HVAC on interior work and fire protection interior work. And the plumbing work in a new building is probably somewhere between 5 to 8%.
But to answer your question, the costs of where your costs are in construction, between the electrical, mechanical, plumbing, sprinkler, it's about 50% of the cost of construction in those 4 or 5 trades.
And the next 50%?
Is in the rest of the trades, all the rest of the trades. Your mechanical and electrical constitutes almost 50% of the cost of your job.
Big numbers in Joe's end of the business.
Yeah.
Now, for my audience, so are you saying you don't believe that some of these buildings will be built?
Oh, I said that it's possible they might not get financed. I mean, you know, that we're not on that.
Right, but you know, we were saying prior to the show about the cost element, that today with the financing world as it is, even though every one of you, and I know Charles knows it, you know it, that your customers have to pay you, okay? Be it the end user, somebody's paying the bill at the end. And banks today are having, are really looking at the deals. They're holding back on the payments, aren't they? Aren't they having they're tighter? No, they're paying the money, but they want to sign off and all this other problem. Do you see the credit crunch having an effect on your business?
I haven't seen it in our business, particularly since we specialize more in corporate interiors. In fact, I haven't seen it at all lately. We've been busy. We're busier than we've ever been. Last year was a record year for us, and this year seems like it's going to be.
We haven't seen it yet either, and I would say virtually all our work, or 95% of our work, is in Manhattan.
Yeah.
We have a record backlog. We're just hoping that it continues, because the sentiments out in the marketplace and the basic information about the credit tightening would just lend one to believe that there would be less projects going into development. It has not shown up yet.
But as you know, New York is not America. It's a separate country.
Wait,
what applies the rest of it doesn't really apply
Joe,
here.
you bring out an interesting point, and Charles brought out an interesting point. The majority of Charles's work, from what you just said, is in Manhattan. The majority of your work is in Manhattan?
Well, I would say about half our work is in Manhattan. We're in about 12 different cities throughout the U.S.
No, but I'm talking about in the. I'm really talking about. The problem is people are too Manhattan-centric.
Yes.
But there are projects taking place in Brooklyn. There are projects taking place, in Long Island City.
Sure. Well, the greater New York area. I even consider Jersey City part of the greater New York area.
But my question is, New Jersey, we said before, there's a definite price differential because of the labor cost. Is there a price differential when we go into the other 4 boroughs?
No. Where we have a price differential is because our union has looked at the marketplace. They have established a different level of pay for smaller residential buildings in what's referred to as the outer boroughs. So yes, plumbing price will be cheaper for a 10-story residential building in Queens than it will be for a 10-story residential building in Manhattan. But that's just because of our union rules allowing that.
And it's not just the labor. Let's face it, there's a lot of other logistical issues that a developer or owner has in Manhattan that he doesn't have in the outer boroughs.
Correct.
The permitting process, the permits to get cranes on streets, the difficulty of delivering materials. I mean, we bring tractor-trailer loads of windows in. We have to deliver them at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. You go down to Wall Street, you're not going to be able to unload a tractor-trailer from 9 to 5. You're going to unload that tractor-trailer at 3 in the morning, and it's got to be out of there before 8 o'clock in the morning. So these logistical issues add to cost factors too, because you're not paying $95 an hour when you're working at 3 in the morning. You're paying $140 an hour when you're working at 3 in the morning with iron workers unloading a tractor trailer.
But what Larry said, I think, is very interesting, and I think that has to be taken into consideration. You're saying that the union has taken the initiative to say, as a protection device, we might say, because they want to keep the job as a union job. They are saying we can pay a plumbing employee less money?
No, they pay the same. They just give you a different mix between the plumbers and the apprentices. So it brings your team costs down. But the plumber himself, he goes home with the same money in Manhattan as he does in Brooklyn or Queens. But the end user, it's costing me less, and in turn I can charge less, because every 2 men cost about 25% less than they would if it was 2 regular mechanics.
Let's take Long Island City, a good example. I mean, there's a new Citibank building being built. I hope they pick the right company like Structure Tone to finish it. But would it be less expensive to do the interiors in a Long Island City or a Brooklyn building, what Larry was saying, or is it you don't see any major difference?
Maybe it would be reflected in the subcontractor's cost to me, but I don't see a major difference, no, not in the general 5-borough area. I mean, there's situations like that, like Larry brought up, where he gets a better wage rate because he can mix what we call M-men or A-men and so on and so forth. There's a slight differential in cost. In the overall cost of the project, there will be, the general conditions could be a little cheaper because, as Charles brought out, the logistics are easier. In Queens, you can pull up a trailer at 12 noon and unload it in Queens. You can't do that in Manhattan.
But you know, in the window business, I mean, there are certain historical renovations taking place in Brooklyn and other projects. Brooklyn has a similar problem to Manhattan. I mean, downtown Brooklyn.
Parts of Brooklyn do.
Downtown Brooklyn has a similar problem. Now, what about construction? I mean, you do business in Long Island. I don't know about you, Charles, but is there a differential in Long Island versus Manhattan?
Yeah, well, plumbers get paid a lot less in Long Island than they do in Manhattan or
different
in the city.
Yes.
So it's, you know, it's going to
What
cost
about
less.
in your
we did some historic steel windows at the Theodore Roosevelt Courthouse. Now they call it the Theodore Roosevelt Government Operations Center in Mineola. But the job wasn't large enough for me to really give a relationship or a contrast to our Manhattan projects. But that's about the type of work we would do out there, and it is a little less expensive.
But with you know, you can pass on the cost up to a certain level, but in the recessionary times, you know, when in my role at Apollo, when we're looking at a deal, we're saying, hey, we have to try to keep the prices down because we want to make the deal efficient. Do you see the unions becoming cognizant the same way that Larry said that they're being cognizant in Queens? Do you see that happening other places?
Well, your first initial question was, why does construction cost what it does? Let's not forget about the fact that we have a worldwide raw material shortage, and virtually everything has increased. Windows that 5 or 7 years ago, the same identical product that I would buy from a top-line manufacturer, like you recently had Traco on the program, that might have cost $400. That same window today, because of the increase in aluminum, the increase in cost of glass, which is primarily energy-driven, and the increase mandated by the Department of Energy for lower thermal values, U values, all add up to a more expensive product. So where I could buy that window for $400 or $500 5 or 6 years ago, that same product today is a $700 window. And I think you're seeing this reflected in many of the other substrate
particularly
trades.
A lot of the today there's a big trend to doing green buildings. Adds a lot of.
That was the show the week before.
It adds a lot of cost to the job. You know, it's.
But you know, on the show the week before, Bob Randall and Bob Bond and Chris Daly all said, you know, that echo boomer or that younger person wants those energy efficient.
But there's a bigger cost to the developer to build that energy efficient building. Much bigger cost.
But you know, in the same manner, you know, you have the employee wants that type of things. You know, they want certain changes. How many people today? I mean, on the window business, I know it's all energy efficient today.
Right.
Everything has become energy efficient. I would assume that not in the plumbing, in the heating and ventilation, you're trying to get it more energy efficient.
You're trying, but it's not something that's really that prevalent.
Why? Why can't you have energy efficient? We were talking about this in the week before. You can have energy efficient lighting that goes on and off, you know, with motion detectors. Sure. Why can't you have energy efficient in the heating and ventilation?
You can.
There's a cost attached to it.
Right. It's got to be designed that way, and there's a cost to it. And then the magic words come out: value engineering.
Yep.
And then it goes by the boards.
But I mean, in today's, with oil at $100, with what Charles was talking about, the raw material cost, you know, you can go to a certain point that there's operating expenses. I mean, fine, you build the construction, but companies like Walmart, Citigroup, other places are all trying to save money. efficiently. I mean, if somebody said to me, that ING Clarion has a person who's responsible for cost savings in buildings. Citigroup has done this. Don't they want to do this with regard to this energy efficient in the construction business?
Well, I'm sure they all want to do it, Michael, but there's a big cost differential in building a green building than building a standard building.
So what's the cost differential? What's the cost differential?
Be 20%
Because
more.
Well, I can't comment on that because my industry is being mandated to achieve those
correct.
values.
Right.
So the cost is the same for whatever we have to do.
On a job we're presently doing, which is a green building, it's added somewhere between 10 and 15%.
And why has it added 10 to 15% in the plumbing?
Because the additional equipment and additional piping. And with the equipment and the piping comes labor. And it's added, in this particular case, well over $1 million.
Right, and they reuse the water now?
Yeah.
And what other...
They reuse some of the water, yeah.
They reuse some of the water, and there's other efficiencies.
And there's other certain efficiencies, but somebody's got to maintain that plant. It's not for free. It looks nice, it's green, but there's
a cost attached to it.
Somebody's got to maintain it. He's probably an extra maintenance guy in the building taking care of this stuff.
And the developer who builds a green building is going to charge more rent to his potential tenants because he has to make up those costs.
However, one of your previous guests did indicate that the younger 20-somethings are demanding green, and they're willing to pay for it.
No, they're demanding it.
Right, but their employer has to pay
in the residential.
Yeah, in the residential.
As Chris was saying, in the residential, these people are demanding it and they're paying for it. Now, unfortunately, the younger person who wants to have those green efficiencies are fine, but I'm not certain if that law firm or that financial services company that they work for is willing to pay the 20% extra to have that office with this green situation. I mean, part of it is lighting, right?
Oh, a big part of it is lighting.
I mean, lighting is a major component.
Lighting, it's carpeting, it's everything. It's ventilation. It's everything. It's the way. It's even in the materials you buy.
It's in the boxes. You got to
right.
You can't bring stuff in that isn't in boxes that have been made out of recycled materials.
You can't.
Not if you want the highest LEEDs rating.
Right.
You
If you want the highest LEEDs rating, you have to.
And what do you get if you have the highest LEEDs rating?
You get what they call a platinum certification.
Does it save you any money? Does it give you anything else? Or just gives you the idea that you have a platinum certification, and when you're leasing that building or going out to someone, you can say, I have a platinum certification.
Yeah, and maybe you get some higher rents.
Higher rents.
And an appearance on the Stoller Show.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of appearances on the Stoller Show, in the 7 seasons that I've done the show, I've never really brought together a group of people who are in the construction business to provide my audience and myself some information about this, also to find out what the labor costs and everything. I'd like to thank Joe Capitelli, Charles Crowbart, and Larry Levine for being here today. See you next week.
Major funding for these programs is provided by grants from HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, SJP Properties, Murray Hill Properties, Bank of America, Greenberg Traurig, LLP. Additional funding is provided by grants from Arbor Realty Trust and Terry's Investment Partners, Athena Group, BRT Realty Trust, Burden LLP, City Habitats, City Investment Fund, Cushman & Wakefield, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, Herbert J. Sims & Company, Herrick Feinstein LLP, Helmsley Spear, Jackson Development Group, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Kilroy Metal Products, Massey Knackle Realty Services, M&T Bank, Meridian Capital Group, McSam Hotel Group, Newmark Knight Frank, MOINIAN Organization, Musk Development, Palin Enterprises, Rosenthal and Rosenthal, Signature Bank, SIDNEY FETNER Associates, Sutphin Properties, Stonehenge Partners, Studley, Triangle Services, WITKOFF Group, Extreme Contracting and Deconstruction.